parties, and that's why the only changes that ever made by us were with the consent of the opposition parties.
There will be 5 minutes remaining for a period for questions and comments to the honourable member for York Simcoe when the House next resumes debate on the question. But now we're going to statements by members. Déclaration de député et l'honorable député de Hull.
The honourable member for Hull-Aylmer. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow I'll have the great pleasure of organizing a day-long event on the Hill with 50 young people from the Hull-Aylmer Youth Council. They'll have an opportunity to spend a day rubbing elbows with the parliamentary community and to be at the heart of our democracy. They will participate in several workshops and attend conferences. In fact, I'd like to invite all members, all of my colleagues here in the House, to come and meet with them, to share your political experiences with them.
Events. First, that all of you will let yourselves be taken by the enthusiasm, energy, and ideas of the members of the Hull-Aylmer Youth Council. They will remind us why we chose to enter this noble vocation. Second, please share freely with these young dynamic people the distinctiveness of the ridings that you represent. Laissez-moi vous confier une chose, Monsieur le Président.
Allow me to tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker. These young people who will be here tomorrow are very enthusiastic. Thank you.
Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, during the last federal election, all parties, including the Liberals, promised to bring forward a bill in memory of Sergei Magnitsky that would increase sanctions on foreign officials who are involved in government corruption and human rights abuses. Sergei Magnitsky was a Russian lawyer who uncovered the biggest tax fraud orchestrated by corrupt officials. The Russian government arrested Sergei. He was tortured, denied justice, and beaten to death in a Russian prison. This morning, the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs presented its unanimous report entitled A Coherent and Effective Approach to Canada's Sanction Regimes, Sergei Magnitsky and Beyond. Magnitsky legislation has been adopted by the United States, the European Parliament, and Estonia to impose stricter sanctions on all corrupt officials and violators of human rights. Adopting Magnitsky legislation here will further enable the Government of Canada to quickly sanction corrupt foreign officials from all corners of the world. This is not a partisan issue, but the Liberal government has refused to take action. I encourage the government to support my bill, C-267, Justice for Victims of Foreign Corrupt Officials Act, the Sergei Magnitsky Law, and fulfill their campaign promise.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, it is a great honour for me today to rise and pay tribute to a truly meaningful and historic event that recently took place on Coast Salish territory at the University of British Columbia. I often visited my friend Jim Hart Udansu of Old Masset on Haida Gwaii as he and his team of carvers for months worked on a 55-foot, 800-year-old red cedar totem pole. This, the reconciliation pole, has salmon at its base, representing the cycle of life. A mother bear holds her 2 cubs. Then comes the break. A residential school, a government-instituted system designed to assimilate and destroy all Indigenous cultures across Canada, in which people nailed copper nails in to represent the lives of each child that was lost. The children with numbers on their chests come next, but they are followed by the 4 spirit figures, representing the strong cultural roots of First Nations people. Next comes the family, holding the child, representing revitalization of the family in the story today. 2 canoes, First Nations and Canadian governments, representing different paths yet tracking together. Eagle rises at the top, representing the hope for the future. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we near the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, I would like to acknowledge the contribution of a wonderful group right here in Ottawa. This Sunday, the Ottawa Children's Choir will be performing as part of the official ceremony marking 100th anniversary of Vimy Ridge at the Canadian National Vimy Memorial in France. The choir is comprised of 24 singers aged 11 through 15. I am pleased to say that one of my constituents, Adriana Winchester, will be taking part in the ceremony this weekend. The Ottawa Children's Choir will be joining Canadian dignitaries, veterans, members of the Canadian Armed Forces and RCMP in participating in the ceremony. Mr. Speaker, I request to be joined by all members in this House in wishing Adriana and the members of the Ottawa Children's Choir all the best in France. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Gatineau.
The Honourable Member for Gatineau. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Monday, I went to the Gatineau Seniors Centre for the launch of the 40th anniversary programming. Great news, Mr. Speaker. For 40 years, this centre has been meeting the needs for involvement, learning, support, and socialization for people age 50 and over. Thanks to this solid network of partners, employees, and volunteers, the centre offers various services, recreational activities, and accommodation. The accommodations are offered in a safe environment. Activities are also offered to break isolation and solitude among seniors. I visited the centre many times, and I can assure you that the quality of service provided is excellent. The centre's decided to identify under a new name. In addition to offering services for seniors in Gatineau, it's a campus, it's decided to call itself Campus 3. And I want to congratulate Campus 3, which has been very active in the Gatineau community for 40 years.
Mr. Speaker, last month the Liberal government introduced its second budget. Budget 2017 actually does more to hurt Oshawa businesses and families than it does to help. We now have a new carbon tax, increased payroll taxes, and the highest electrical rates in all of North America, while the Americans are lowering taxes and lowering the cost of doing business. Budget 2017 nickels and dimes Oshawa businesses and families and makes life under the Liberals more expensive. In Oshawa, we know that in order to create jobs and grow the economy, we need to be competitive. Liberals failed to lower small business taxes, and they didn't offer any new incentives to create jobs. Budget 2017 takes aim at the Oshawa middle-class families and students. Nothing in the budget puts money back into our pockets. The Liberal budget eliminated the public transit credit, the caregiver credit, and the family caregiver tax credit. Canadians said goodbye to the measures that hardworking middle-class students and young Canadians relied on to make their lives more affordable. Working-class Canadians and those wanting to join it deserve better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, last Saturday, I was very busy. In the morning, I was in de Montagne to participate in a citizenship ceremony where 30 new citizens joined the large Canadian family. Then it was with great pleasure that I attended in La Chute the awarding of the Quebec Lieutenant Governor's Awards for the Laurentide region. 6 people from my riding were awarded medals. 3 young people received the Youth Medal to support their excellence in education, as well as their volunteer commitments. Congratulations to Jimmy Bell. I'm also proud to congratulate 3 recipients of a medal for volunteership. Congratulations to the 3 of you, and thank you for having done such a good job of representing the riding.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you've noticed the prevalence of the colour yellow in the halls of Parliament this month as MPs adorn themselves with daffodils like the one I'm wearing today. That's because this April is Daffodil Month, a chance for Canadians to show solidarity with the more than 800,000 of those among us who live with cancer. The daffodil is also a call to action. In the over 60 years since the Canadian Cancer Society sold its first daffodil, cancer survival rates have increased from 35% to over 60%. That's impressive, but there's more work to be done. I know every MP has organizations in their riding who are part of the effort to defeat cancer and to support those who are battling it. In Halifax, groups like the Lodge That Gives, the IWK Health Centre, and Prostate and Ovarian Cancer Canada are part of that fight every day. I encourage everyone to reach out to organizations in their hometowns to #join the fight. Because, Mr. Speaker, in a time when we all know someone living with cancer, we're all in this together.
Well done, Ian.
The Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, it's Throwback Thursday on the internet, hashtag TBT, and I can think of no better theme for this Liberal spending deficit budget. I know many Canadians' reaction to this tax and borrow and spending budget would be to throw it back in this government's face. But this budget is also a throwback to the dark and painful time in Canadian history, the 70s. Disco was popular, bell-bottoms were a fashion must, and the father of the current Prime Minister was unleashing a 25-year structural deficit on the nation. Flash forward to today. The son is practicing what the father preached. Like something out of the 70s, this government believes in a sort of super freaky Keynesian economics, which is another way of saying the Liberals have things backwards. They run deficits when times are good, which means even bigger deficits when times are bad. The weird belief that spending more than you have will magically create jobs that last longer than the money you borrowed is throwback thinking. Hashtag TBT.
The Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and happy Tartan Day to all. Mr. Speaker, to say that I am proud of the companies and residents of South Shore St. Margaret's who continue to raise the bar when it comes to business, innovation, and community involvement would be an understatement. I would like to highlight a few of those businesses who last month were recognized by the Lunenburg Queen's Business Excellence Awards for their outstanding achievements. All Outdoors Landscaping, Bucks Home Building Centre, Tilia Builders, CO3 Working Space, Terra Beata Cranberry Farms, and Atlantica Oak Island. But that's not all, Mr. Speaker. Just last week, we learned that Ironworks Distillery in Lunenburg took home 5 medals at the International Distillers Competition in Germany. 2 golds for their gin and apple brandy, and silvers for their Père Eau de Vie, amber rum, and their ever-popular Blue Nose rum. I invite all of my colleagues to join me in congratulating these award winners and all rural businesses across the country for their outstanding contributions they make to our communities.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Centre.
Mr. Speaker, for International Women's Day, I invited my constituents to nominate a woman who inspires them. I stand today to recognize an exceptional woman. Gabriella Mamoni demonstrated to all of us that when life gets difficult, how we react to it is what's important. In 2004, Gabby was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. A successful entrepreneur, Gabby became an ambassador for the MS Society. She also founded Kind Projects, which helps charities achieve their goals. Ms. Mamoni received a Mississauga Civic Award of recognition, followed by a Canadian Small Business Woman of the Month award. Gabby is married to Tony and is the mother of John Luca and Alicia. So, Mr. Speaker, if you ever feel a sense of helplessness in the face of adversity, all you need to do is look at Gabby. She's a mother, a wife, an entrepreneur, an activist, dealing with MS, yet she finds strength to lift us all and make Canada a better place.
The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, this week I announced my intention to reintroduce Bill C-561 from the last Parliament, a bill dealing with forced organ harvesting. In other parts of the world, most notably in China, people who have committed no crime are murdered by the state so that their organs can be used for transplantation and for other purposes. Often these people are being targeted as part of the PRC's repression of religious and spiritual communities which they don't like. Now, here in Canada, we have a legal gap which must be addressed. There is no law to prevent a Canadian from going abroad to receive a harvested organ. Supporting organ harvesting is a crime against humanity in international law, so it should be a crime here in Canada as well. I'm reaching across party lines to get this done. This bill was originally written by Irwin Cotler, a former Liberal Justice Minister, and I look forward to working with the member for Etobicoke Centre, who also proposed a bill on this issue in a previous Parliament. As the government pursues closer ties with China, they must allay legitimate fears that human rights will be sacrificed along the way. Fixing gaps in Canadian law on organ harvesting would be a very good step.
The Honourable Member for Ville-Marie, the Sud-Ouest Île-des-Sœurs.
On April 9, 1917, a relentless artillery barrage pounded German trenches in front of the Canadian lines at Vimy Ridge. Unlike most of the ridge, the barrage failed to hit a critical German trench system facing the 87th Battalion CEF, the Canadian Grenadier Guards. Facing the steeper part of the hill, these brave men, mostly in their 20s, rose from their trenches, encountering the stiffest resistance of the German lines. Within 6 minutes, more than half of the initial wave was wiped out. While the Canadian Corps won the day, the Canadian Grenadier Guards, the unit I would proudly serve 73 years later, suffered one of the highest casualty rates among all units, with 155 killed in action and over 150 others wounded of the 800 or so who took part in the assault. Thanks to these men who fought foremost for their fellow brothers in arms, a country was born. Sons who loved and were loved, never to be fathers, from this simple soldier, lucky enough to have avoided the stench of war. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Rest in peace.
Honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, this week a working group of local mayors, regional district directors, the MLA, the MP, First Nations and community groups like the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network put together the Alberni-Clayoquot Working Together to Reduce Poverty Protocol Agreement. The protocol agreement compels leaders to consider the innate connections between poverty and health outcomes when formulating policy and planning for the future of our communities. Sadly, Canada and BC have failed to show leadership on poverty reduction, and it shows. The ACRD has the fourth highest rate of poverty in all of British Columbia. 1 in 3 children are living in poverty. The percentage of people receiving income assistance in that area is 3 times the provincial average. This is why we need collaborative leadership on poverty eradication across all jurisdictions. There is a lot to be done, but together we can work to lift people out of poverty and build thriving, strong communities for all.
Honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Canada's 7th annual Tartan Day. This is an opportunity for us to celebrate the nearly 5 million Canadians of Scottish heritage. And in Perth County, we are celebrating the unveiling of the Perth County Tartan. Under the leadership of Perth County Council, the Perth County Tartan was created to honour the 150th anniversary of Confederation. The tartan colours are green to represent our deep agricultural roots and fertile land, blue to represent the rivers and streams, red to commemorate the sacrifice of our early settlers and pioneers and the veterans who fought so hard for our freedoms, and gold to reflect the industrious nature of the people of Perth County. I would like to thank and congratulate all those involved in the creation of this wonderful tartan, including Councillors Helen Dowd, Doug Kellum, and Bob Wilhelm, and Committee Member Pauline Hartfield. I'm proud to wear this tartan as a part of our county's proud and rich heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Whitby.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow we will be commemorating the 23rd anniversary of the Rwandan genocide, during which 1 million people lost their lives over a 3-month period, which began on April 7th, 1994.
Commemoration marks the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in human history and should serve as a constant reminder of the never-again promise that the international community failed to uphold in Rwanda. It is also a day to reflect on our responsibility to prevent genocide and protect the vulnerable. I would like to salute the actions of those who, in the face of unspeakable atrocities, stayed to protect civilians. To the survivors of the Rwandan genocide, your resilience inspires admiration and respect. Rest assured that we will never forget, and we will continue to stand with you. Thank you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member for Carleton.
On Monday, the government reported to the House in writing that no deal had yet been signed with Bombardier. Yesterday, the Innovation Minister's office said the deal was sealed on March 24th, 5 days before the company announced a 50% pay hike for its executives. What a coincidence. Now each of these executives will earn more in 4 days than the average Canadian earns all year long. I guess they won't have to work Fridays either. If this agreement actually exists, did it ban Bombardier from using Canadian tax dollars for these outrageous bonuses?
The Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The aerospace industry is one of the most innovative ones in Canada. It generates 200,000 high-quality jobs in Canada and 1% of our GDP. The refundable loan provided a few months ago will help preserve high-quality jobs and create new ones. That industry is very important to our economy and to the growth of the middle class.
Billionaire Bombardier Baudouin family has super voting shares that give them a majority of the votes with a minority of the stocks. That allows family members to elect themselves to be executives and pay themselves, in the case of Pierre Baudouin, 10 times the industry average. If the company raised money by issuing shares, they would dilute their votes and lose company control. Isn't it true that the government bailout is really about protecting the feudal privileges of this billionaire family?
The Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Our government was elected to grow the economy, to grow the middle class, and to help more Canadians join the middle class. In that context, Mr. Speaker, key investments in the airspace industry are important. They are going to support that industry, which contributes to more than 1% of total GDP in our country. In this particular case of a reimbursable contribution, it will also help maintain 4,000 jobs and create 1,300 additional new jobs.
Order. The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, all of this raises a question of how they define the middle class, Mr. Speaker. $372 million for Bombardier billionaires. However, everyday Canadians will pay more for gas and groceries, kids' sports and Uber rides, beer and bus passes. Why is this government taxing more from those who take the bus so it can give more to those who take limousines?
Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the question from my honourable colleague. I'm just afraid, Mr. Speaker, that his memory is failing. The first thing that our government did, Mr. Speaker, was to reduce taxes for the middle class. 9 million Canadians are paying less taxes, Mr. Speaker, and I guess there are thousands in his ridings today which are paying less taxes because of this government, Mr. Speaker. We invested in families, we invested in the middle class, we invested in infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. That's what responsible government are doing. That's exactly what we'll be continuing on doing, Mr. Speaker.
Allard.
Order. You have to listen to both the questions and the answers. Now, a member for Louis Saint Laurent.
The thing this government did was to create a huge deficit, and we thought to return to zero deficit in this country. This is totally unacceptable. Alors, Monsieur le Président, si le gouvernement...
Mr. Speaker, if the government really cares about taxpayers, they were elected saying they would run a small deficit and balance the books in 2019. Can the government tell us when Canada will return to balanced books? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to have a question from my colleague from Louis Saint Laurent. The first thing we did was precisely to reduce taxes on the middle class. 9 million Canadians are paying less tax. That's thousands of people in his riding paying less tax thanks to this government. In 2016, we invested in families, in the economy, in infrastructure, and in 2017, Mr. Speaker, we've invested in training and innovation. That's precisely what responsible governments do. We invest in our people. That's what we've done, and that's what we'll keep on doing. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, you listened to the minister's answer, as did I, and it shows that the government can't tell Canadians when the books will be balanced. It's unacceptable. There's no plan to restore balance, and there's nothing for our farmers, those who feed Canadians. This government, in this document, with all of its pages, there's nothing about agriculture. Mr. Speaker, why is this government going after those who feed us?
Order. Order. I know members, including the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, are very engaged in this discussion. But I'd ask them to restrain themselves. Order. 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 Order.
I was about to say, but I would ask them to restrain themselves until they have the floor. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been in this House a long time, and to be able to be President and Minister of Agriculture with the type of budget that our Minister of Finance presented to this House is certainly a credit to our agricultural sector and certainly gives me great pride. Mr. Speaker, $950 million to enhance Canada's global competitiveness by focusing on industry. $200 million on clean technology, $1.26 billion to strategic innovation. Mr. Speaker, what this government has done is made sure that our...
The Honourable Member for the Nanaimo Ladysmith.
While the Prime Minister never misses a photo op to proclaim his feminism, his government's credibility does not add up on the world stage. This Prime Minister has given Donald Trump the misogynist cover on women's issues and still defends arms sales to a country that systematically discriminates against women. And a report just released says Canada's ranks 4th last on the gender wage gap. If the Prime Minister really wants to impress his friends at the UN, he should take real action for Canadian women. Will the Liberals implement childcare and pay equity legislation now?
The Minister for the Status of Women.
Speaker, my honourable colleague joined me in New York City for the Commission on the Status of Women, with over 200 members of Team Canada who proudly waved the Canadian flag. We have a feminist Prime Minister who has helped bring forward the most feminist budget this federal government has ever seen. There is $100 million devoted to addressing and preventing gender-based violence, Mr. Speaker. There is a commitment to introduce pay equity legislation by 2018. There is a commitment, Mr. Speaker, to invest in women and girls entering fields they're not traditionally included in. That, Mr. Speaker, is feminism.
Fellow member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has repeatedly asserted that he's a proud feminist. But according to the Conference Board of Canada, his government has failed miserably when it comes to the wage gap. We, the women of Canada, have been waiting years for policies to help eliminate the wage gap between men and women. Though the Prime Minister waxed feminist in New York, why isn't he doing anything here to end this injustice?
Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague, and I recognize that for decades, members of the feminist movement have been calling for actions that this government is taking. We recognize that the majority of caregiving work is provided by women. That's why we've introduced $7 billion for an early learning and childhood framework to work with provinces and territories to implement. We recognize that elderly parents and other family members are also cared for by women usually. That's why we've introduced EI benefits that are flexible and provide women with choice. We've also, Mr. Speaker, done a number of other things. I'll get back to it the next time I get a question.
The honourable member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister proved our point that he doesn't need to change the rules to answer the opposition's questions, and that's his job. But he's still determined to go ahead with this power grab without any respect for our democracy. Why not cut the crap, sit down with the opposition, and have a real discussion and come up with some unanimous recommendations to improve our parliamentary system? Mr. Speaker, our government is determined to transform question period so that all members, including the Prime Minister, have more opportunities to be accountable. We have made a commitment to Canadians during the last election campaign to modernize Parliament. As the member said, yesterday the Prime Minister answered all questions in question period, and that shows how determined we are to bring true change to this place so that the viewpoints of all members are heard.
Speaker, both opposition House leaders have made a fair and reasonable proposal that we follow the model that Jean Chrétien used for his parliamentary modernization. It included one member from each party, and it was chaired by the Deputy Speaker. Let me quote from the committee's mandate. The committee shall not adopt any report without the unanimous agreement of all the members of the committee. So, Mr. Speaker, if it was good enough for John Chrétien's majority Liberals, why does this minister believe her majority government is so much more entitled?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Commitment to Canadians to bring real change to Ottawa and to have their voices heard in this place. That's exactly why we want to have a conversation with all members of Parliament, and we know that the important work that the committee does, we want them to continue doing that important work. The discussion paper was meant to build upon the work that they were already doing, to have important conversations, to have discussions so that we can modernize the way this place works and to bring it into the 21st century workplace. I encourage all members to share their points of view, and I look forward to hearing them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Right, Mr. Speaker. Well, one starts a conversation by telling the truth. And the truth is that in the last election, the Liberals had exactly two promises regarding standing order changes. Those were, number one, to prohibit omnibus bills, and number two, to prohibit parliamentary secretaries from sitting on committees. There was nothing there about 4-day work weeks. There was nothing there about the Prime Minister turning up once a week. There was nothing there about limiting debate in committees. So this story that somehow the opposition will be practicing a veto on the government's election mandate is just nonsense. Why does the government continue to perpetrate this kind of nonsense in its so-called conversation?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what is the case in regards to the discussion paper will remain the case in regards to the platform we ran on? It's important that members read the document in its entirety. There was many commitments that were made in the platform to Canadians to respond to the very real concerns that they had. And these concerns that we were responding to were in direct response to the approach that the previous government took in this place. What we know is it's important for all members of Parliament to have an important conversation on the standing orders to modernize this place. This government's already been taking action. What we're saying, if we could codify those in the standing orders, not only can we hold this government...
L'honorable député de Mégantic-Lérable.
The honourable member for Mégantic-Lérable. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister reappeared on stage and treated Canadians to quite the theatrical performance. Get a load of some of the lines he delivered. I want to work together with all members. People expect us to work together respectfully. It's totally reasonable to want to work together with other members. The PM is long on talk but short on action. We all know the Liberals are planning to change our rules unilaterally to their advantage. Just a reminder, it has to be unanimous. When are the Prime Minister's nice lines going to stop being pure theatre? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as I've said repeatedly, we hope to hear what everyone thinks about this idea. All members' viewpoints will be taken into account when it comes time to change the standing orders. I know we can work together. I would encourage all members to take part in the conversation. I think it's a very important conversation to have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Defence Minister is willing to stifle, silence, and outright contradict government and military officials, all to save face for the Prime Minister. Despite what the Defence Minister says, official documents prove there's no capability gap in our fighter fleet. It was the Liberals that cut danger pay to our troops, and our allies were not happy with the Liberals' decision to withdraw our CF-18s from the fight against ISIS. When will the Defence Minister admit that he's misleading Canadians and put an end to his dirty little habit?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for the questions, but not for all the language that he used on there. We're committed to making sure that we deliver for our troops. When we looked at the massive cuts that were made by the previous government, that's one of the reasons we conducted a defence policy review. And that's why we're going to be making sure, Mr. Speaker, when we launch the defence policy review, we have the appropriate investments and looking after our Canadian Armed Forces and our men and women who serve us into the future. Thank you.
Honorable député de
The honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the minister is an alternative fact specialist. One, our allies don't like Canada's new mission in Iraq. They wanted us to keep up with the airstrikes. Secondly, Canada does not lack fighter jets. That's a Liberal invention in order to give a $7 billion handout to Boeing. Third, the Canadian forces urgently need equipment, but they've cut $12 billion to procurement. And they're slapping a gag order on everyone for life. What percentage of the minister's answers are not alternative facts? The Honourable National Defence Minister.
Yeah, member opposite from last year, I also stated that the fighting in Iraq cannot happen from the air. It has to happen on the ground. That's why we tripled our trainers, doubled the intelligence, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to say that's actually having an impact on the ground right now. That's one of the reasons we're having that success on the ground. We're going to make sure that our troops have all the appropriate equipment. We're going to be launching a full competition to replace our entire fleet, Mr. Speaker, and when we launch our new defence policy, we'll be outlining to Canadians and to all parliamentarians our plan to look after the Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you.
Honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, Peter Cleary, the Health Minister's former senior advisor, has joined Santis Health, a registered lobbying firm that exclusively lobbies the federal government on behalf of healthcare clients. Not only was he her former advisor, but he was personally lobbied by Santis Health numerous times in 2017. Wow. He will now be the one lobbying the Liberals. Mr. Speaker, does the minister think it's acceptable for one of her senior staff to immediately accept a position with a company that is actively lobbying her and her department?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member would assume, the person that he referred to that is no longer working in my office obviously met with the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner to discuss arrangements, and everything about his new position was cleared with that commissioner. The staff member will not be lobbying our government.
Honourable member for Oshawa.
Well, Mr. Speaker, not only does Peter Cleary's new job raise red flags, but it turns out that all of Santis Health's principals work closely with the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and Principal Secretary at Queen's Park. And you guessed it, Mr. Speaker, not only are they registered to lobby the Health Minister, but they also lobby PMO. So, Mr. Speaker, how can Canadians believe that a Prime Minister who only makes decisions that benefits his friends won't allow the PMO to be lobbied by their friends at Santis Health?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly encourage the member opposite to not manufacture a concern that is not based in fact. The person about whom he is speaking has cleared his new position, and it is very clear that he will not be lobbying this government.
Honorable député de...
The honourable member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie. For months, the Federal Pay Service has been mired in a total mess. Some people have been paid double, some not at all. They've had to borrow to pay the bills. Those responsible for this mess should be punished, but no. What are the Liberals doing? They're giving them bonuses. Yes, sir. Bonuses. B-O-N-U-S. Bonus. Not little ones either. $5 million in bonuses. $5 million in taxpayer money for not getting people their paychecks. Is that what Liberal management is all about? Rewarding idiots and incompetence? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you, as Parliamentary Secretary and as Member for Gatineau, that solving these problems, which we inherited from the previous government with the Phoenix pay system, are top priority. And I'd like to remind the member, order.
To listen to question period and hear things they don't like. And members on all sides, without reacting, without saying anything until it's their turn. And I encourage others to do the same.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I'd like to remind the member that senior executives responsible for Phoenix did not get the bonuses. The minister asked the Auditor General to examine all aspects of Phoenix, which is something the opposition should be happy about.
Through the Liberal platform, which has been nominated for several prestigious Canadian fiction awards, by the way. Yet nowhere in this fantasy does it say anything about shoveling out millions of dollars for private company bonuses. No, and I can't seem to find the chapter that talks about paying millions more in bonuses to government executives who screwed up the lives of 82,000 public servants. So when will the Liberals actually start helping working people in this country instead of the wealthy and well-connected? Because frankly, Canadians are getting tired of this old Liberal story.
Parliamentary Secretary for Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure my honourable colleague that Canadians are welcoming the fact that we are going to fix this pay system that we inherited from the Conservatives, and that we are going to honour our public servants with respect, and we are going to pay them on time with a pay system that they demand. But perhaps my honourable colleague would be better off asking the Leader of the Opposition why, on March 12, 2012, she said that Phoenix not only ensures the sustainability and increased efficiency of pay services for the Government of Canada, it generates savings for Canadian taxpayers.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, the Transportation Minister handed failed Liberal candidate Jennifer Stebbing a new job, Director at the Hamilton Port Authority. We know that Transport Canada requires candidates for this job to be experienced in transportation, especially marine transportation. But that experience is nowhere to be found on her resume. In fact, she's an estate planner. Maybe she plans burials at sea. Will the minister just admit that Jennifer Stebbing's only qualification for this job is that she's a Liberal?
Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to answer this question. I hope my colleague is actually listening. Jennifer Stebbing is an outstanding choice with vast professional governance and community experience, serving in leadership positions in the Halton Law Association, the Hamilton-Halton Women's Lawyers Association, and the Hamilton Taxpayers Coalition, for which she is president. We all know how important it is for port authorities to work with neighbouring residents to address the needs of the port, as well as that of local communities. I am confident that Jennifer Stebbing will be a strong voice.
Order. While I would like members to listen, I would like members to let me ask people to listen, and better, I think, for order in this place that I do that than others do it. The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I go to visit my friends, I have never left with an invoice. But that seems to be exactly what happened when the Prime Minister left Billionaire Island. But instead of paying the bill himself, he stuck it to the taxpayer. In what world does a Prime Minister live where he believes that it's acceptable to use the taxpayers' money to repay hospitality expenses charged to him by his billionaire friend?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as I have answered in this House many times before, irrespective of where the Prime Minister travels, whether for personal or business, he is given the necessary resources, just has been the case for all previous Prime Ministers. This is the case, this is what it's been, and that's exactly what the answer is. And I look forward to working with the member on doing the important work that Canadians actually elected us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder the Prime Minister wants to shut this place down on Fridays, cut off debates, and reduce the number of questions he faces. With all of his ethical scandals and bad government policy, the Prime Minister wants to avoid accountability at all costs. Canadians elect us as MPs to make their lives better. They don't send us here to make the Prime Minister's life easier. When will the Prime Minister stop his attack on accountability and transparency in this place and end his unilateral pursuit of making this House into his personal safe space?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this government was elected on a campaign and a promise to Canadians to actually do better work in this place, for all members of Parliament to work better together. The discussion paper was exactly that, an opportunity for all members of Parliament to have a discussion, to have a conversation, to really be able to contribute to how we can work better in this place to do the important work that Canadians elected us to do. Yesterday was another example of a Prime Minister's question period where the opposition leaders as well as private members had an opportunity to ask the Prime Minister a question and receive an answer. That was in addition to other days that the Prime Minister is present. We believe we can do better in this place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister can answer as many questions as he wants without jamming rule changes down the throats of members of Parliament. The changes being rammed down our throats by the Prime Minister diminish the voices of all Canadians in this place. The Prime Minister's new rules will reduce opportunities to debate, to ask questions, and to hold this government accountable to Canadians. Turning off the lights on Fridays does not serve the interests of Canadians. It serves the interests of this Prime Minister. When will he stop his arrogant push to make his life easier and abandon his attempts to reduce his own accountability and transparency in this House of Commons?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, as I have said many times before, I actually look forward to having conversations with members on both sides of the aisle on this important topic. It's in regards to our standing orders. It's in regards to modernizing the way the House of Commons works and bringing it into the 21st century. I believe that we should be able to have these important conversations. I believe we should be able to listen to different opinions that might not match our own so that we can have constructive conversations to improve the way this place works. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Cynthia St. Bagot. Mr. Speaker, in the budget there are measures to improve the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. But, according to the UPA and Ferme Quebec, these measures are too late to help with this season. This despite the fact that a parliamentary committee recommended that the government act by no later than January 19th. We all knew that the program isn't working. Even the Labour Minister's press secretary said it in an interview. Will the Liberals apologize to our local farmers who will lose thousands of dollars because of this government's inaction? The Honourable Minister of Labour.
We've taken concrete steps to improve the temporary foreign worker program to ensure two things. First of all, that Canadians have the first chance of getting available jobs while ensuring that the rights of temporary foreign workers are respected in Canada and are upheld. And last December, we strengthened the labour market impact assessment that each employee must complete. Employers must demonstrate concrete actions about their efforts to hire Canadians, including Canadians from underrepresented groups. So, Mr. Speaker, we're continuing to work on this program. We're confident that we're getting it right. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, we already know that this government won't even meet Stephen Harper's pitiful greenhouse gas reduction targets. They promised the moon and the stars in the election, but what was in the budget? Well, when it comes to electric cars and charging stations, despite the climate emergency, nothing. There's nothing for at least a year. The United States got a network of charging stations paid for by Volkswagen, which was faced to compensate for the diesel scandal. Has the government at least considered that approach so that, because unlike charging stations, it's not Volkswagens that are missing on our roads? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Important issue for Canada, and it's an incredibly important issue for this government. When we came to power, we launched a development of a pan-Canadian framework with the provinces and territories that resulted in a historic agreement in December that focused on how we can actually have steps that will allow us to get to the greenhouse gas reduction targets while at the same time accelerating clean growth going forward. The budget followed on, providing funding for the Pan-Canadian Framework, providing $21.9 billion in green infrastructure funding, $2.2 billion for clean tech in Canada. We are on the right track and we will meet our targets.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes that strategic investments in public infrastructure play a key role in supporting dynamic communities while creating good jobs that help grow the middle class. Budget 2017 commits new funding for investments in public transit, waste, water, culture and recreation, and rural infrastructure, and these are all much-needed projects in Alberta. Can the minister tell the House how our government is supporting infrastructure investments across Alberta?
That's a great question.
For infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the member for Edmonton Centre for his advocacy. Working in partnership with the Government of Alberta and Alberta municipalities, we have approved 128 projects with combined investment $4.2 billion. And these projects include wastewater line in Lacombe, project that should have funded in 2012, and transit projects for St. Albert, Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, and Red Deer. Some of these municipalities are receiving this funding first time in a decade. Mr. Speaker. Wonderful.
Thank you. Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, this government never misses an opportunity to rip money out of the pockets of hardworking Canadians. For decades, Canadian farmers have been able to defer cash grain income from one year to the next. Now the Liberals want to take that away without proper consultation and apparently without even knowing what they're doing. This bad decision will affect farmers from across the country. Why is it that the only new agricultural initiative in Budget 2017 is a Liberal rip-off of hard-working Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I always am honoured to stand in this House and to talk about the good work that our government is doing. Our government strongly supports the Canadian grain industry, which is a key driver of exports, jobs and economic growth. With changes in recent years, the grain marketing, the delivery of listed grains is now the responsibility of the private sector instead of the federal government. Budget 2017 launches consultations with farmers and stakeholders on this tax deferral, and we want to hear from farmers before moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are waging war on small businesses. Family-run operations like campgrounds and self-storage facilities are being targeted for being too small to be a small business and are receiving huge new tax bills. The Minister of Revenue keeps claiming that she knows the critical role that small businesses play, even while they ended the review of active versus passive business income rules that would have ensured small businesses had access to the small business tax rate as they should. So will these Liberals stop talking out of both sides of their mouths and actually stand up for small businesses instead of trying to tax them out of existence?
Honourable Parliament.
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, small businesses play an essential role in Canada, and we are working with all small businesses, and the rules for small businesses are still the same, and they apply to all small businesses, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when she says the rules haven't changed, you might want to try telling that to the campgrounds that are currently taking this government to court to fight this. Because if nothing has changed, she should explain why they're all of a sudden being faced with these huge new tax bills. So I'll give her a hint. They ended the review of these rules that we put in place in the last Conservative budget and then changed the interpretation of what's considered an active business so that they could go after the family-run campgrounds. So I'll ask her this. If the Liberals are successful in taxing campgrounds out of existence, what other small businesses are they going to send the tax man after next?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I will say it again, small businesses play an essential role in Canada. And when I repeat that the rules, the tax rules are the same, these are rules that were put in place under the Conservatives. If they thought the rules were so bad, well, they had 10 years to change them, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Municipalities across Canada are desperate for infrastructure funding. The Liberals have a new hallmark infrastructure fund of $250 million slated for essential infrastructure. Unfortunately, it's in Asia, going to the Asian Infrastructure Bank, a bank that the Conservative government and the Obama administration declined to join because it was not in the best interest of taxpayers. So why are the Liberals wasting taxpayer dollars in China instead of funding essential infrastructure in Canadian communities?
The Minister of International Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have, after 2 years of analysis and looking at how the new infrastructure bank in Asia is working, we concluded that this was a good way to finance development projects in some of the poorest and most vulnerable countries in the world. And I'll give you an example. Projects in Indonesia for drinking water, projects in Bangladesh for electricity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, again, today, unions and municipalities and industry were at Quebec City asking the federal government to play a leadership role in the softwood lumber file. In less than a month, we expect the Americans to impose a tax on Canadian exports. The outcry is growing, Mr. Speaker, but the federal government isn't listening. And it still hasn't put in place a loan guarantee program. The government keeps bragging about consulting Canadians, but for once, could they please listen and act to protect our jobs?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Natural Resources.
Merci. The sector forestier Canadian est
The Canadian forestry sector is very important for our communities. A stable and predictable market promotes economic development and the creation of good jobs. We will continue to work in close collaboration with the provinces through the Federal Provincial Softwood Lumber Working Group to have a coordinated approach that will meet the needs of businesses and workers who could be affected.
For Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, border services officers in my riding of Kootenay, Columbia, and across Canada are some of our hardest working law enforcement officers. Every day they protect our borders from illegal arms, drugs, and other smuggled goods. Despite their importance, this Liberal government, like the Conservatives before them, refuses to fairly negotiate a collective agreement with these officers. The government is demanding concessions from our border staff, and now talks have broken off. When will the Liberals get back to the bargaining table and treat our border services officers fairly?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Treasury Board is the bargaining agent on behalf of the Government of Canada. Those responsibilities are taken very seriously by the government to ensure that everyone who works for the Government of Canada is treated in a proper and appropriate way. And obviously the border guards who work for CBSA are doing a very, very important job keeping this country safe and making sure that our borders are sound, secure and efficient.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the numbers don't lie. In Washington and Colorado, where marijuana has been legalized, deadly road accidents have gone up. This week, the Saskatchewan Association of Chiefs of Police indicated that they fear that the Liberals are legalizing pot before essential tools and training are in place to protect our communities. Mr. Speaker, my question is very simple for the Minister of Public Safety. Can the Minister please tell us if officers will be trained and that all vehicles in Canada will be equipped with detection devices before the government legalizes pot?
Mr. of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been very clear that we take the issue of maintaining the safety of our roads very seriously. We have made a commitment, and we are committed to undertaking to ensure that law enforcement and our courts have the legislation, the technology, the training, and the resources that they will require to keep our roadways safe.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, before summer 2016, the Canada 150 Fund was for activities that encouraged participants to give back to Canada with gifts of time and energy to leave a legacy for the future, gave Canadians the opportunity to actively participate or celebrate together to promote and allow for a better understanding of Canada, its population, and what it means to be Canadian, and that will recognize and promote exceptional Canadians and the places, achievements, and events that contribute to shaping our country. Mr. Speaker, why did the Heritage Minister reject all the projects that met those noble goals? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his important question. We are proud to have developed a vision for the celebrations of Canada's 150. And they're based on 4 themes: youth, the environment, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and diversity. I am convinced that my colleagues recognize the importance of those 4 themes and that we can all work together to build our future for the next 150 years. We are also proud that thousands of projects will be funded in concert with our partners across the country, and they'll happen across the country and show the best of who we are. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, let's hear the truth. There's written proof. As if by magic, Part G, Question 50 morphed into this. Projects supported by the Canada 150 Fund will be new and will specifically celebrate the 150th anniversary of Confederation. We encourage applicants to create and propose projects that encourage active participation and bring Canadians together to acknowledge and celebrate our diversity in an inclusive way and that will help build our country for the future. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister be honest and show integrity, admit the injustice that she created, and explain why she changed the program's objectives? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to reassure my colleague that everything was done with the greatest honesty and diligence possible. Everyone who participated in the call for tenders were asked to submit projects, and what we wanted to do as a government was ensure that we had a real vision for the Canada 150th celebrations, a vision focused more specifically on four themes which are respected across the country: youth, the environment, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and the importance of diversity and inclusion. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lefjord. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative Party debates the merits of the Canadian supply management system, our party understands perfectly that this system is a model of stability which offers a fair price for farmers, stability for processors, and safe, high-quality products at reasonable prices for consumers, and that the system supports farming families and rural communities across the country. Can the Minister of Agriculture tell us what the Conservative plan to abolish supply management would mean to Canadian farmers and their families?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Our dear farmers in our supply management system. We are the party that fought to implement supply management, and we are the government that will continue to support supply management. The Conservative plan to eliminate supply management would cost billions of dollars. It would cost the closure of many farms, and it would not affect the price of the product. Our government will continue to work closely with our farmers to protect and defend our farmers, which very much includes our supply management sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Peace River Westlaw.
Mr. Speaker, Charmaine Stick, a member of the Onion Lake Cree First Nation, is here in Ottawa today, pleading with the Liberals to enforce the First Nations Financial Transparency Act. Band members are often told that there is no money to pay for essentials like housing repairs or medical supplies. For years, Charmaine has been trying to get her band leadership to tell her where the money is going. Now she has finally resorted to go to court. Instead of enforcing the law, why are the Liberals forcing grassroots band members to go to court to get basic information?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for his question today. We believe that transparency is very important in all aspects of government. We're working very hard with Aboriginal governments across Canada to develop an act that is truly transparent, that ensures full accountability. In communities like Onion Lake, for example, we have been involved in working with the leadership in that community, and we want to ensure that we can increase transparency and accountability with their First Nation leadership and all of their organizations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, at the Transport Committee, the study on air safety has already revealed that pilot and employee organizations support Judge Masansky's proposal to hold an independent public inquiry into air safety. Justice Masansky, whose credibility is widely recognized, confirmed that the federal government is playing with air safety when he said, among other things, that Transport Canada has completely abandoned traditional regulatory oversight. What will the Transport Minister do to fix the situation after years of Liberal and Conservative cuts? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, as you know, air safety is a priority for our government, and we are constantly reviewing ways to improve it. We need to be constantly vigilant with air safety to ensure that our air network is safe, and we do that based on an approach that is based on risk. Our department has undertaken over 10,000 inspections in the last year alone. We continue to be vigilant, and if there is a need to make changes, we will make them. Thank you.
For Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, housing is a key issue of concern for the residents of my riding. Affordable housing, cooperative housing, social housing, housing for our aging ethnic populations are top of mind for Davenport residents. Our government has taken important measures to answer the housing needs in this country by investing $2.3 billion in Budget 2016 and has introduced a much-needed $11.2 billion for the National Housing Strategy in Budget 2017. Can the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development provide more details to the House on this important investment and how it will address the needs not only of those living in Davenport, but all Canadians?
Well, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member of Davenport for being such a strong advocate for housing. Our government is investing in affordable housing to help Canadians who need it most. That is why our national housing strategy will demonstrate the most ambitious federal housing leadership over half a century. Our strategy will ensure Canadians have adequate and affordable housing and will provide stable housing to homeless Canadians. These measures will take 500,000 Canadians out of housing need
and lead to more inclusive communities and a stronger economy.
Honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
Mr. Speaker, fish harvesters attending the Gulf Groundfish Advisory Committee in Moncton expressed their frustrations and disbelief over the Liberals' inaction to protect groundfish stocks by controlling the grey seal population. Despite scientists confirming that grey seals are responsible for declining fish populations, the minister has failed to take action. Given the importance of the fishery to communities in rural Atlantic Canada, especially in light of the drastic reductions in the shrimp quota, will the minister commit to using a portion of the new Atlantic Fisheries Fund to address growing seal populations that are preventing the recovery of commercially valuable fish stocks?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, our government is committed to supporting a sustainable seal hunt, Mr. Speaker. Our government is also working on renewing our relationship with Indigenous communities and ensuring that there is inclusive growth for our coastal and rural communities. We recognize the economic and cultural value of the seal hunt for Canadians who practice it, including Indigenous groups and commercial hunters. And we regularly undertake inspections to ensure that activities are being done in a non-cruel way, and we will continue to ensure that we have a sustainable seal hunt for the future. The Honourable Member for Pierre-Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Public Finance Committee at the National Assembly of Quebec tabled its report on the use of tax havens. Unlike Ottawa, Quebec wants to end this injustice, which is caused by the deference of our institutions, tax avoidance firms, and the ultra-rich 1% who are prepared to do anything to avoid paying taxes. Will the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec stand, as usual, with Bay Street financiers, or will they finally listen to Quebecers who are saying enough is enough? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we all know that middle-class Canadians pay their fair share, but certain rich individuals use complex strategies to not pay their fair share. That is unacceptable, and that is why our government has invested historic amounts in the Canada Revenue Agency, $444 million in 2016, $524 million in 2017, Mr. Speaker. For over the last year, our government has recovered $13 billion, Mr. Speaker. We are working very hard. We are keeping our promises, and we will continue to do that. The Honourable Member for, the Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, I would remind the members across the way, the question period should be followed by an answer period. Now, after the forestry sector, our unions and the UMQ, now the government of Quebec is asking what the Bloc Québécois has been asking for months. How many times are we going to have to ask? A new softwood lumber crisis is coming in 20 days. We've heard this is going to affect real people, families, and entire regions, and they're already being affected, Mr. Speaker. We need a clear answer now. We need to stop playing with people's futures. So I'll repeat the question. Will the government give loan guarantees to the forestry sector to face this new crisis, yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is taking the challenge facing the forestry sector very seriously. The federal-provincial group met recently to discuss various options and to find creative solutions to this important issue. We are working closely with our provincial teams to ensure the long-term prosperity of the forestry sector and to protect jobs and the families who depend on those jobs.
Now I believe the Honourable Member for Leeds, Granville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes has the usual Thursday question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to rise today to ask the Honourable Government House Leader to update the House on the plans for the rest of this week and next week.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bills on the agenda for the next few days will be C-25 on diversity of corporations and C-17, which has to do with the Yukon. I would like to mention two things for next week.
At noon, Malala Yousafzai will make an address to Parliament. Following the address, the House shall meet at 3 p.m. for statements by members in question period. Lastly, for Thursday next week, the House will sit according to Friday hours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Orders of the day.